in my own branch of that wave, or the own sector of the wave that I've taken on as my personal niche, you might say, is also a term you're not going to find defined as I define it anyway in the DSM manual, but it's the area of sexuality I define as fetishsexuality. A fetishsexual, as I define it, is a person who is driven to orgasm or other deep erotic state by an innate, inherent, lifelong desire for a particular range of kink, fetish, DS, BDSM, or other alternative erotic expressions. Again, this is just what I see in my practice, in my own lifestyle, and in the research that I do. This is a phenomenon of there are tens of millions of people embracing a fetish sexual orientation. And this is beyond just, well, I like to play a little bit now and then level, to where people know my lifestyle, everyday, 24/7 being is in this motif. I look at it as similar because of this identification of it as innate and inherent, that it is similar to homosexuality. You know, it's another sexual identity, an authentic sexual identity, innate, inherent, lifelong, and it's what people are. So, another thing I want to just check in there on is this, besides orgasm, and even more importantly, is these deep erotic states. Fetish sexuality, as I look at it, as I experience it, as I work with people, and the model that's showing up is what I call a mythic, symbolic, archetypal oriented eros. Meaning that's what's coming alive when this person steps into their sexual expression, is they're stepping into a mythic story, you know, that has themselves and a counter persona. It has language, dialogue, body language, tone of voice, setting, attire, props. And this is the nature of fetish-oriented eros for those who have a fetish sexual orientation. For many people, because we haven't turned the gaze onto it, this is a very unconscious part of them. They haven't had the conversation yet, they haven't opened to it, they don't even know it clearly themselves yet, perhaps. But in those moments before orgasm, right before they get off, whatever has been holding that full, authentic expression back just kind of floods the body, floods the nervous system. It breaks through any resistance thing that has been holding it back, and suddenly the body is just transformed into what I like to think of as the sex creature. You know, everybody's got a personal sex creature that the evidence of it is in that. If you haven't like already opened to it and are in it for hours before then, in that moment at least is when it's going to get its expression in, and it really is what drives one to orgasm. It also can be accompanied by vocalizations of one sort or another, from just, you know, grunts or these guttural, primitive language without words, pre-verbal, along with a blasphemous list of invectives that could be coming out in that moment. And I look at that as like a soundbite from one's, what I call a personal erotic myth. And fetishsexuals have this mythic story in them that they're compelled by, that drives them to connect with others and with a similar mythic structure. So I'm going to talk about that a little more further on, this idea of a personal erotic myth. But I want to go into a little bit more about what's important. The 5 keys that I found that are really important when I work with someone to have them review or check into to be able to be empowered and in their authenticity, and also start a healing process. So the first one I call sexual authenticity. As Does anybody have, what do you think sexual authenticity means? Anybody?
Being real.
Being real, yeah. Anything else?
I'd say embracing what you like.
Yeah, understanding what you like and embracing it. Say that again, please.
Everybody's unique.
Yeah, exactly. It's personally authentic, and this is what's true, especially, and this is, it is personal. That's normal is personal, is how I look at things. Normal is whatever this person's truth is. It's not what I decide or what the DSM has decided or the culture or the church or the law. It's what that person has decided. Now there's some parameters then to engage that in a conscious way that's honorable and noble. It doesn't, but the authenticity is there, and that's different than the expression. So the first part is just to get to the authenticity. So how I look at it is each person who has an innate authentic sexual identity as distinct as a fingerprint and as inherent as your eye color. Your sexual identity defines how strong and frequent your rhythm of desire is, the erotic types you are attracted to, and the core themes that your sexual desire is driven by, from sacred to profane, tender to rough, mild to wild. And these are the elements that I say amount to or come together in the personal erotic myth. I also want to point out from my experience of working with clients that I don't see any evidence that whatever their fetish sexual desire is has something to do with a childhood trauma or other lacks that might have gone on in their life that they're now compensating for. That's the general theory. Even the most progressive theorists, sexual theorists, define fetishsexuals, what I call fetishsexuals, as someone who, this was shaped somehow by their environment, by their upbringing, by events that happened to them. That's a similar model that might have been applied to homosexuality in the 50s. Oh, something happened to these poor souls. They're damaged in some way, and this is why they're acting out. So that's not my experience with working with clients for the last 15 years. This is independent from anything that happened in their childhood. I have done a research survey with over 700 participants who, I think we'll get to that slide, but somewhere in the 70% or so believe that I was born this way, And they've reviewed that history to check in, and no, they had nothing to do with, even if they had some abuse in their background, it still had nothing to do with it. Now, sometimes your experience in the background can flavor or influence how you bring that into your authentic sexual expression, but it's not altering or tampering with what that authentic thing is. The big influence from nature, culture, environment, family, parents, is this sex negative overlay that really can thwart, be tangled up with. People can't express themselves in a fully expressive way because of that fear. So the next key is, once you know what your truth is sexual honesty. It's your birthright to be who you are sexually. You have every right to be who you are and express that how you want to express that. It's a human right. And so that honesty first begins with the self. And when you can get there, then, in my experience and in the work I do with the clients, people are able to achieve these depths of intimacy, trust, connection, ecstatic experience by finally being able to be honest with each other and open to what each desires are, and then how to enact them. And unfortunately, honesty's been made nearly impossible in this sex-negative culture we are in. It's too much at risk to speak honestly about our desires, even to our most trusted partners. You know, this is why there's so much hidden, secretive sexuality going on, because people don't feel safe to be able to open up to their partners or their friends or their community or their family. And it leads to all kinds of mayhem in our relationships. It's a tragic situation, and it's so pervasive. You know, most of my clients are in their 40s or 50s, so when they come to me, it's not uncommon, it's quite common for them to say, Galen, I've never told anyone this before. You know, here's this mature, educated, long-lived adult, responsible in the world, capable, and they've never been able to voice often what's like a very simple, it's kind of almost sweet expression. It's not like they're way off the edge somewhere and oh my God, you know, it's just like, oh, I always have thought about being spanked, you know, and just that they have never said that before. I mean, I'm honored that they would tell me, but I'm also, it's so tragic that what is going on in our culture that people can't just speak the truth without such an amazing amount of fear. So this element of sexual honesty is required if you want to be sexually authentic. You don't have a choice. Because if you, I mean, you have a choice, of course, but if you're trying to do a conscious expression of your sexuality, it will require sexual honesty. Now, that doesn't mean lose all privacy and just go running around anywhere and everywhere speaking your truth. It means, you know, first honest to yourself, and then the people that are important to you at some point. Well, even that, I mean, again, I think the most important thing is honest with the self, and then everyone needs to assess where it's right to bring it out to others. You know, understand the risks of hiding and the risks of expressing, you know, and try to find the right place. Or start congregating with more sex-positive people so that you don't have to be afraid of expressing the truth. So the third aspect is what I call sexual empowerment. This means, you know, you know who you are now, you're ready to be honestly engaged with it. Now I'm going to put it into action, into play, into connection, into you know, a encounter with my partner, whatever that might look like. So what this is about, this is a big topic or a long topic, and I don't have time to really cover all of it, but this is an important part of the therapeutic process, because this is where we're getting down into the body level of things, of people engaging, you know, in real time in their body in this engagement. And again, because of our sex-negative culture, you know, the full expression means to be fully embodied. And we are so tense and locked up and shut down and disconnected from our sexual expression that that's going to take a little, it's like taking, you know, starting yoga or something, you know, you need to start getting comfortable in the body. So if someone really wants to express their sexuality, a lot of the times you know, when they come to me, I can see that they are totally disembodied. You know, we're talking and they're just talking a mile a minute and they're just right up in their heads and they don't even know they have a body yet. So this is how disconnected we get from our sexual expression. Is just more generally, we're disconnected from our bodies across the board, not even just speaking sexually. So, but to really get deep into your authentic expression, you want to get deep into your body, which is this state called presence. And so there's a lot of different techniques of mindfulness and different ways that someone can start to learn how to get to this state of presence, you know, where they're really not in the future and the past. You know, being present means I'm not thinking of the future, I'm not thinking of the past. I'm not caught up in my fear of the future or my regret about something I did or didn't do. All these places, or my fear of, wow, what are people going to think if I say this or that? Those are all places when we're not being present. So being present is a practice that one can start to engage. That I have developed a system I call My Yoga, which is a movement-oriented practice, because to get out of this disembodied state, which is when someone's in their head, they're in an unconscious embodiment, basically. Or when someone's in depression, they're in an unconscious embodiment, stuck on the couch and just, their body they can't even move. That's what it feels like, and that's, you almost got to get them to hurl themselves off of the couch, just because by movement, getting out of that body, you start to unstick this unconscious part of the equation, because the embodied is the analog of the unconscious. Whatever body state you are in is reflective of where your unconscious state is, i.e., am I in fear, am I in shame, I am guilt, I'm angry, and I'm trying to hold it back, and so, or I can't get to it, I don't want to express it, so we shut down and disconnect. So to engage in your sexual empowerment, I recommend learning how to develop some practices to get present, because now if I'm present, then if I want to engage my partner, I know that, I want to get my partner present too. So there's what I call hour yoga. That's another phase. And on my website, I have a article about that called, I think, the body's analog of the unconscious or something like that, that goes into a lot more depth about these practices. But this is also the place where one starts to pay attention to the body. Well, you'll notice where the tensions are that are literally where one is holding back. So a lot of clients really have a hard time talking about their desire or their experience. They get a little choked up and eyes are down, and this is a physical manifestation of a conflict inside between the part that wants to express the truth and the part that's been, don't ever say that, or what will so-and-so think, or good boys or good girls don't say things like that, or all these little internalized messages which have a physical context, a physical analog to them, because this is the voice is being choked. Literally, that's something's trying to get out, something's trying to hold it down, and there's just like that. So these are cues, so I don't believe, are you ever, in your journey so far, has anything been taught about the body's relationship to your psychological states? So in your open-mindedness, this is a place that I think is going to be important as you travel down this path to support people, is start to help them learn how to become embodied, be present, be free of the tensions that hold their body in check, so that when they do their movement, their erotic expression, can be free of the awkwardness or the clumsiness or this uncertainty that is inherent in the body, until one gets present and then can just be in the moment with what their truth is. So we'll move on here. The next place that I work with a client is around their sexual shadow. So this is all the secretive, risky, hidden behaviors that people engage in to try and express their sexuality, but in a dishonest, hidden way. And this is like pandemic in our culture, the sexual dishonesty going on. If you look at the media, all the celebrities, the religious leaders, the military people, the sports people who get busted in their sexual dishonesty, and then there's this fall from grace. It's a mythic story playing out over and over. That's just the tip of the iceberg, of that same drama playing out over and over in all kinds of people's lives, of people risking everything to express their sexuality, but not doing it in a conscious, honest way. And that's a real disastrous way to proceed. So my encouragement is to help people who, if you've been hiding for decades, you probably have a lot of ways your shadow has still been operating, because your sexual authenticity is lifelong. It doesn't go away. So it's still operating all the time. You can't crush it, dismiss it, disown it without some big consequence, Okay.
So are you saying we should embrace our sexual shadow? Because it's common, guys have impulses, they find a woman attractive on a daily basis, blah, blah, blah. How do you say, what is it to address your sexual shadow?
Well, it means to look at all the ways you have been out of integrity with agreements that you've made, with your own personal values, with your intention, with your consent, with if negotiated agreements, whatever the context might be. So if you're engaging someone, how do you take it out of shadow? By negotiating honestly and authentically. How? If I want a scene, quote unquote, in the fetish realm, that's what it's called, with either my partner or with a play date, if someone is non-monogamous. I'm monogamous with my partner at this stage. I've been poly-oriented in the past, but I'm now in a monogamous state. But any way that it comes down is it's a negotiation between two people that you get as clear as you can about both desires, where one's edges are, what the boundaries are, and also what one really wants and where one's edges are. And then you proceed with a way that anybody can go, whoa, wait a minute. Because oftentimes there's little landmines or things, so even though you discussed everything, we have so much buried in us about our woundedness or sexual fear, mistrust, all these things that things can come up. And I look at that, because I'm practiced enough, as a good opportunity, because this is something that's unresolved that wants to be addressed, and people can engage in their eros and at the same time work on their stuff, so to speak, if they're open to just being present with whatever's showing up. That's more complicated than I can go into right on the spot about how those fit together. You can find some more information on my website about that. But also, the sexual shadow can show up in ways that one is repressing their sexuality. If they haven't got to the place where they can own it and now are hidingly, secretively operating in it. It can also be by people, oh, sex is bad, your sex is bad, or I think I'll eat an ice cream cone instead of think about sex, or, so people will find other impulsive things. I'll be Facebooking all day, or there's all kinds of things that we can rechannel this energy into. And unfortunately, this, a lot of people's sexual authenticity, they take it to the grave with them. They never cross that threshold to be sexually honest and show themselves in the world. So it's not an easy journey. Our sexuality is very complex, and to get it right, to be authentic, to be honest, it's a practice, number one. There's no perfection in it, but there is these steps one can take towards bringing it to a more conscious, honest, safe expression. I'm not very good at this thing. All right. The fifth one, paradox. The other four are pretty much, I think, across any sexuality. This might be a little more skewed just specifically towards fetish sexuality, because as I look at it, stepping into fetish sexuality is embracing the paradox of a lot of things, but one thing, for instance, is the civilized and primitive dimensions of who I am. We live in a culture that's for several millenniums has aspired and wants to believe that we've reached this civilized way of operating in the world, and being a human has a certain, civilized criteria that any civilized person would adhere to. So obviously that's a fallacy if you look around the world and you see our primitive, brutal, inhumane treatment of each other all across the world, all across the board in all sorts of manners. You know, we're not really civilized at all. We're still using muscular solutions to problems, you know. That's mammals do that. So this primitive side of us somehow also gets, you know, this is why it's still a mystery. Nobody knows these things, but in my experience, the primitive side of us has gotten combined with Eros somehow. And so this paradox is the bridge that a lot of people have a hard time crossing, and they're really stuck in this place. Well, wow, I'm a good man, I'm a good parent, I'm a loving partner, I'm a concerned citizen in the community, I respect others, I care about others, I believe in human rights, and I'm a dominant erotic sadist. How can that be true? You know, they're seeming, you know, because in the monotheistic culture that most of us have been immersed in the West, you know, we are trained that things are good and evil, black and white, either or. You can't be one, you got to be one or the other. But in my experience, I think the truth is paradox. We are both these things. We're both civilized and primitive. We are sacred and profane. It's like the Oriental cultures, you know, put it in terms of yin yang. They don't cut it as one is good and one is bad. It's the unity of the two together that is the whole. So this is the wholeness of the person, is to embrace that there's ways to hold honorably these two parts of our nature, you know, and again in a negotiated way that's in agreement and with our partners' values, our own values. And so people can step into these journeys into this, what I'll call the taboo forbidden territories of fetishsexuality, from, you know, SM and every kink and fetish you can imagine, you know, pain and degradation, humiliation play. I mean, these are all things that people are stepping into and say, oh yeah, that makes me totally hot, you know, versus in a real world, non-negotiated context, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want it done to me. But in our erotic expression, these parts of us really do have these desires and these yearnings, at least if you're fetishsexually oriented. And that's why millions of people are on sites like FetLife and tons of other sites that are finding and communing and creating communities, meeting partners, building relationships on this paradox, you know, learning how to do it in a noble, honorable, mutual way. And again, that's why the conscious exploration is important, because these are intense energies that one's bringing up and dealing with, and it takes a certain pace, you know. Also, that's another important thing of anytime, if you are crossing these thresholds, getting into these types of expressions, is, you know, start slow and move a little at a time and see how's it going, you know. Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. Or am I still getting turned on? Or, whoa, it's bringing up some fear in me, and that's the place. Okay, so stop there. Let's check in about what's going on. So it's a very paced effort is what I find the best way to approach those types of engagements.